discuss block 1, that is definition and scope of archaeological anthropology. So, as we are aware that anthropology is the holistic study of human being, where we used to study the three major areas. One is sociocultural anthropology. Number two is biological anthropology, or also called the physical anthropology. Number three is the archaeological anthropology, also known as the prehistoric archaeology. So let's start with the introduction part, where we'll discuss today the definition and scope of archaeological anthropology, history and development of archaeological anthropology, and the interdisciplinary relations and approaches of archaeological anthropology. So, in Unit 1, that is the definition and scope, it specifies the main branches of archaeology and also its major conceptual and methodological developments. Unit 2 takes the story one step further and gives details information about the development of Stone Age culture as well as the protohistoric culture. And in the similar way, the last unit, that is the interdisciplinary relations, which used to analyze the holistic goals of reconstructing ancient societies, ancient culture, with the help of different subjects from the various disciplines. So, as we know, the anthropology used to study the human being, and here when the anthropologists used to study the human being in totality, their main focus was to study the simple societies living across the world. And who are the people belong to this simple society? The so the people of simple society includes the hunter-gatherer communities, the fishing communities, the pastoral groups, or the peasant societies. So all these groups, they used to live side by side in different parts of the globe in general and different parts of the country like India in particular. They are distributed in different geographical areas, and also they live close to their surrounding natural environment. So when we are discussing the anthropology and archaeology, we used to see very close relationship among them. So both are very closely related, interrelated subjects. In both the subjects deals with the origin and development of human culture. And because of that, both the anthropology and archaeology occupy an important position in social science researches. So, when we are discussing about the anthropology, basically as we discuss that it used to study the human origin, evolution, development, and how it originated, how it evolved, how it spread across the globe. So here we need to study the origin and evolution, both from the biological point of view as well as cultural point of view. Here in archaeological anthropology, when we to discuss, our focal point is on the material remains of past. So from that point of view, if we will discuss archaeology, we will see that archaeology is an important discipline, is an important area with a methodology of its own. Even if this is part of social sciences, but it has its own methodologies. It recovers the antiquarian remains of various kinds from the field by using different techniques like explorations, excavations, and also studied the collected antiquarian remains in laboratory. So when we are discussing this archaeological anthropology, it is considered as the one of the major branches of anthropology which deals with the origin and development of human species. It discusses the material manifestation in the form of material culture. So, from this point of view, if we'll see, we'll get that archaeology not only helps us to understand the diversity in the world around us, but also help us to understand how people relate to the material world. As we are discussing, archaeology used to study the past culture through the material remains. So it used to help us to reconstruct the past material culture of the people. So here in our definition scope, we'll discuss the conceptual part, definition part, where we'll see that this archaeological anthropology is also known as the prehistoric archaeology, also as the prehistory. So different people use different name to understand this archaeological anthropology. So when we are saying the prehistory, it used to define pre plus history. This is the combination of two words, where pre means before, history means the culture which started with the origin of script writings. So in this context, we may cite the work of our Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru in his book, The Discovery of India. He mentioned that he did not write it as an academic text, but for his own purpose to serve as a guide for understanding the present condition of India. In other words, we may say that Nehru visualized the past as a window for looking at the end, understanding the country's present situation. So, from this statement of Nehru, it is very clear that to understand our present condition, to understand our present material culture, to understand our present culture, we must have some knowledge of our past. Because past is the foundation pillar over which the present is constructed. So from that point of view, to study our past culture in general and the prehistory or archaeological anthropology in particular is very important. So here we'll discuss the introduction part, prehistory, protohistory, civilization, and conceptual developments, archaeology, the methodological development, etc. So as we are discussing prehistory, this is the period. Prehistory is the period used to indicate the time before the recorded history. What does it mean by recorded history? As I told, history begins with the writings. And before writing, whatever we are having in human cultural development, in human biological development, that is the part of prehistory. Pre means before. So, from this context, if we'll see the origin of nomenclature, the origin of term prehistory, it goes to very early stage. It was the Paul Tournelle in 1833 who coined this term prehistory as the prehistoric to explain the finds that he had made in the caves of southern France. And the word prehistoric, the English word prehistoric, was for the first time introduced by the Daniel Wilson in 1851, almost 20 years after the Paul Tournelle's coin of this particular term. So when we are saying the prehistory, the term refers to all type of cultural development, all type of cultural evolution of human being, or whatever cultural development related to human being, including his biological evolution till the beginning of historical period. Till the historical period means whatever we are having in past, and that is before the introduction, before the invention of writing. That particular territory belong to the area of our prehistory. So when we are discussing prehistory, we used to find the evidences from different parts of the world. We used to get the evidences from the African subcontinent. We used to get the evidences from the Middle East. We used to get these evidences from the Europe. We used to get these evidences from Asia. We used to get these evidences from Australia. So later we'll discuss in detail about the findings and the places. So now in conceptual part when we are discussing, it is also equally important to know the time period, the time range of this particular prehistoric time. So this time range used to differ from place to place. Even if we are calling the prehistory,
Hmm.
so in Indian
And with
context,
you,
if we will take example, we'll see
खाली भेंडी भैया कर दी हमारे
it used to range from 0.6 to 0.7 million years ago. The recent records, recent findings from the Isampur of Karnataka and Othirampakam in Tamil Nadu, which indicates the date of this prehistoric period up to 1.2 or 1.5 million years ago. So now we got the broad idea about the prehistory, where we are defining this is the time period of human development before the discovery of writings, and which extend from the emergence of our first ancestor to about 5 million years ago. That is up to the time of invention of writing. Up to the time of invention of writing. So here, if you see the division, so this is the broad cultural division of human evolution. So if we'll see the prehistory, that is also called the Stone Age culture. Why it is called the Stone Age culture? Because during this particular prehistoric time, our prehistoric denizens, our ancestors, they were using stone as the major raw material for preparing their weapons for different activities, for hunting, for gathering, for fishing, etc. So this Stone Age culture or prehistoric culture, that is divided into different time period, different subdivisions. So as I told earlier, the before history that we are calling the prehistory, and prehistory is broadly divided into three major categories. One is Paleolithic, another is Mesolithic, and third one is Neolithic. So at the beginning of human cultural evolution, if we'll correlate it with the geological time period, geological scale, time scale, we'll see that towards the end of geological time period, that is the Pleistocene and Holocene era, major prehistoric cultural evidences are found. That part will come later and that we'll discuss. So now, as we are discussing, first what we are getting the prehistory, what I told, the before history. But here, in between prehistory and history, we do have another phase of human cultural evolution. That is called proto-history. So now we'll try to understand what is the difference between prehistory and proto-history. Before that, we already discussed prehistory and history. History begins with the writings. Prehistory, before writing whatever we had in human culture. So now, when we are discussing the proto-history, it is somehow different from the prehistory as well as from the history. Or we may say proto-history is the connecting link between the prehistory and history. So why the difference used to come between prehistory and proto-history? So the major difference is that prehistory is the cultural period when human beings were basically using the stone tools or some extent the bone tools, or they were also using different kind of antler, tusks, or wooden materials. That is called the prehistory, when they were completely unaware about the writings or other material other than the stone, bone, or the wooden materials. So in proto-history, when we are saying the proto-history, proto means the immediate before the period what is coming, that is called proto-history. So which is the time period when people also started using different kind of metal artifacts, or that is also in other words known as the Chalcolithic period. Chalcolithic. Chalco means metal, lithic means stone. Like prehistory, we are calling the Stone Age culture. Then proto-history, we are calling the Metal Age culture. Then coming to the history. So in prehistory, when we are discussing, as I told, prehistory is broadly divided into Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic. So out of these three subdivisions, the Paleolithic is coming under the Pleistocene geological time period. And after Pleistocene, the latest one or the recent one, that is called the Holocene geological time period. That time, Mesolithic and Neolithic cultural period evolved. So Mesolithic is the first or beginning period, beginning stage of the Holocene era, and Neolithic followed to the Mesolithic. So this Paleolithic period is again divided into three subdivisions based on its findings, based on the material remains found from the Paleolithic culture. So these three divisions, that is the lower Paleolithic, middle Paleolithic, and upper Paleolithic. So this Paleolithic culture is divided into three parts. So here, before going to the this subdivision, we must have to know the meaning of the Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic. Paleolithic. This is the combination of two words. One is paleo plus lithic. Paleo plus lithic. Paleo means old, ancient. Lithic means stone. So old stone age. Similarly, Mesolithic. Meso. This is the combination of two words. Meso and lithic. Where Meso stand for middle. Lithic means stone. So where our prehistoric people, they were using very small, very tiny size stone artifact. So Mesolithic is related to the microlithic tool. The last one is the Neolithic, where neo means new, lithic means stone. New means the tool type which was used by these people, that was somehow different during this time. So later we'll discuss in detail what are the tool types, what are the tool technology. So this particular time, Neolithic time, people started using a different type of tool, having different technique. Also, they started a new type of economy. That's why this is called Neolithic. Neolithic. So now we are clear about this. This prehistory is divided into three cultural period: Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic. Paleolithic is again divided into three subdivision: lower, middle, and upper. So if we'll discuss the difference between one cultural period to another cultural period, we'll see there are so many differences are there. Even if some cultural characteristic features are continuing from one stage to another stage, one period to another period, but they do have some kind of variation from one to another. As I told, the geological period, Pleistocene, from the Pleistocene time period, we are having some kind of evidences related to human culture. Before that, even if we had our biological evolution, but cultural development started from the Pleistocene geological time period, and the first cultural period, that what we are calling the Paleolithic. And during this Paleolithic time, our prehistoric denizens, prehistoric people, they were using different kind of stone tools for different kind of activities. And these stone tools includes chopper, cleaver, hand axes. Similarly, during Middle Paleolithic time, the prehistoric people, they were using basically the flake tools. And in Upper Paleolithic time, they were using the blade tool. During Mesolithic time, they were using the microlathe. During Neolithic time, they were using the ground and polish tool. So these tools are not only differ from one to another in terms of its typology, sorry, but also in terms of their technology, means the technique of making, the technique of manufacturing these stone tools, so that is also equally important, that is also equally important. So here if we'll see the chopper, cleaver and hand axes of our lower Pelthic cultural period were basically prepared by using anvil or block on block techniques, hammerstone technique, cylinder hammer techniques, etc. Similarly, the flake tools of Middle Pelthic period were basically prepared by using different kind of flaking technique, which includes the Clactonian flaking technique, Mosterian flaking technique, etc. Similarly, blade tools are also basically prepared by using flaking and pressure technique. Microliths are mainly prepared by using pressure flaking technique. And the Neolithic tools are prepared by using the flaking and chipping technique of the previous culture, as well as they introduce the grinding and polishing technique. And these grinding and polishing techniques are unique for the Neolithic people. So when we're discussing about the raw material, means the main material, main stone used for preparing this stone tool includes the quartz and quartzite for the chopper, cleaver, hand axes. For flakes, basically the quartzite. Blades also chart and quartzite. Microliths, different shades of chart like grey chart, black chart, banded chart, chalcedony, agate, milky quartz, etc. And the Neolithic tools are basically prepared with the dolerite, diorite, etc. So apart from this, apart from this, if we'll see the cultural development of our ancient people, we'll see a transitional period, what I told here, proto-history, or what we are calling the Chalcolithic period. What we are calling the Chalcolithic period. As I told, Chalcolithic means the use of both stones and metal. The time period when we are using the stone and metal, and that is also called the proto-history. That is also called the proto-history. So this particular term, proto-history, you will see it was first coined by the French people to understand the transitional period between prehistory and proto-history. Prehistory and proto-history. Because as, as we already discussed that history begins with the writing and prehistory is before that. But there was a in between, there was a transitional period which is coming under this proto-history. Like in Indian context, if we will take example, we may keep the Harappan sites, the archaeological sites located in Harappa, in Mahanda, Dholavira, all are coming under this proto-historic period, Chalcolithic time period, when people were not developed completely, when people were not aware much more about the other metal remains, and still they are continuing different kind of stone tools and ceramic remains. So this is the proto history. So Later we'll discuss detail about this proto-history and the place of find in the Neolithic culture like this. So let's go to the early history. As we discuss the early history, you to begin with the writings, and that is the last stage of cultural evolution. And with that, our civilization started. With that, our civilization started. With that, our complex society started. With that, our uh, settled village life started. With that, our formal political system structure started. So there are a lot of development which develop along with the development of our civilization. So that part we will go later. So when we are discussing about the evolution of human culture, evolution of human culture, that time we must have to remember one thing, that the surrounding ecology, surrounding environment of our prehistoric denizens played an important role for all these kind of cultural evolution, cultural development. So it was C.J. Thompson, the curator of the Royal Danish Museum, who for the first time tried to separate the human cultural evolution based on the available material, because you are the museum curator, and based on the uh, collected material about that museum, he tried to classify, tried to categorize the findings into different groups, because he found that in some sites only stone tools are available, sometimes some metals are also available, in some places some ceramics, pots are also available. So based on that, he tried to categorize the cultural evolution. So and that is the beginning phase of our development or analysis of our cultural evolution. So based on these evidences, it may be the stone tools, it may be the pots, ceramics, it may be the other material related to the construction of house or settlement, it may be different kind of art objects. So all these materials, whatever we are getting from different archaeological sites, different archaeological contexts, that used to help us to know, to identify, to reconstruct the past cultural behavior. So based on the available material, based on their typology, based on their technology, based on their raw material, based on their painting, based on their engraving, based on their themes, based on their use, based on their place of habitation, based on their stratigraphic deposit, we try to understand, we try to reconstruct the way of living, how they were living, where they were living, what they were doing, what they were eating, how they were connected to their local environment, local ecology, that we used to reconstruct. So when we are discussing about the evolution, development of archaeological anthropology, in this context, recently a term coined, introduced in archaeology, that is called processual archaeology. Processual archaeology means uh, a methods of archaeology, or we may say the a kind of approach of archaeology, where we try to understand, we try to theoretically understand the structure of archaeology and their development, how it is and how it developed. And this particular term, processual archaeology, was first coined by the V. Gordon Child in his book Piecing Together the Past. Later, the term was also used by Graham Clark and others. So here in processual archaeology, the archaeologists they try to prove the different evidences, different theories of archaeological development, archaeological evolution with the help of modern scientific technology, modern evidences. So as we told, so before introduction of processual archaeology, the archaeologists they were trying to reconstruct the past culture only on the basis of the findings and their typotechnological analysis. But here, when we are discussing the processual archaeology, we are trying to prove, we are trying to provide scientific evidences to prove the various cultural evolution, various cultural evolution. So this is the one of the important parts of our methodological development in archaeology. So now we'll come to the different areas of archaeological anthropology, different sub branches of archaeological anthropology which used to understand in a more better way about our past culture, and that include the environmental archaeology, the settlement archaeology, the ethnoarchaeology, the experimental archaeology, the ethnological studies, etc. Let's discuss one by one. The environmental archaeology. Environmental archaeology. As we are very much aware that without help, without support of our local environment, no one will be able to survive, whether that is the plant species or animal species, including the human being. So we are very much, as well, we can say, the very closely related to our environment. So in environmental archaeology, we used to study the past human interaction with the nature. Means if we'll see that particular time during our prehistoric time, our human beings were more closely related to their surrounding environment. So they were more closely related to their surrounding environment for hunting, for gathering. They were going to their nearby forest areas. They were collecting food, maybe the fruits, trees, flowers, leaves from their local environment. They were also hunting different kind of small games and big games, maybe the birds, rats, deers, or any other animals available to their surrounding environments. So here, when we are discussing about the environmental archaeology, basically we try to understand the interaction between human being and their environment, as well as to their culture. So, man, nature, and culture. The this relationship, how these human beings are related to their nature based on their cultural practices. Because culture is to develop based on the requirement of human being. So here we try to see the interaction, the interrelation of man and nature. So that's why environmental archaeology used to help a lot to understand the relationship of man and nature. So in this context, the Carl Buzer, for the first time, who coined the term environmental archaeology and tried to study the past human ecology, the geo and bioarchaeology, etc. So this environmental archaeology used to basically study the linkage, interconnection of human being with their local environments. So here, when we are studying the environmental archaeology, we need to study different kind of animal remains found from the archaeological sites. Maybe the bones, maybe the teeth, antler, tusks, either the raw one or in fossilized form. Similarly, the eggshells, then different kind of fossilized plant remains. So that used to help us to reconstruct the past environmental condition, because the type of animals, sorry, or the types of plants what we had during our prehistoric time, that help us to know the environmental condition of that particular time, because in a particular environmental condition a particular kind of species used to survive, and based on the change of environment that species had to change. What we also need to discuss, the survival of the fittest. So here the environmental archaeology used to help us to understand the correlation, the linkage of this kind of plant product, animal product of past, or plant remains or animal remains of past, and their connection to our human cultural development. Similarly, when we are going to the settlement archaeology, as we are very much aware that during the Paleolithic period, especially the lower Paleolithic, middle Paleolithic period, people were the hunter-gatherer and who were living under the open air. Later, they tried to occupy different kind of natural rock shelters. And during Mesolithic time, they were mainly depending different kind of natural rocks for their habitation. But later, with the introduction of agriculture, people started making their small huts close to their place of activity, that is the place where they were cultivating. They were constructing small huts with the help of different kind of plants, leaves, skins, and later with the increase of their population, that particular huts or band society converted into the complex society, and later they constructed big houses and started living same place and started the village life. So this settlement archaeology used to help us to understand the process of settlement The development of settlement from simple society to complex society, the material what they were using for construction of their houses, their villages, their settlement, the material what they were using for different kind of activity, the place where they were constructing the houses, so how that particular place is related to their local resources like the forest, the water bodies, rivers, streams, etc. So this settlement archaeology is to help us to know the settlement pattern of the past people, where they were living, how they were living, and why they were living in this particular area. Similarly, coming to the ethno-archaeology, this is one of the recently developed subfield of ethno-archaeology. So, ethno-archaeology means the study of present ethnic group, present people, to understand the past cultural behavior. Ethno means the people, the community, a group of people who are living in present context, present ethnographic context, or presently. But there are different kind of cultural characteristic features like their settlement pattern, their subsistence system, their art and craft, their material culture, their mortuary practices. So these kind of sub areas help us to reconstruct the past cultural life, the past people. So as we are very much aware that prehistoric time, basically our past people they were surviving with the hunting gathering economy or fishing economy or pastoral pastoralism or domestication of different kind of animals. So and these were their major economy. And from the ethnographic context, if we'll see, there are groups of people still living in very simple way, very remote area. We can take example of the Kungsan or the Bushman of Kalahari Desert, Africa. We can take example of Eskimos, and from Indian context, we may take example of different PVTGs, particularly vulnerable tribal group people, or previously we are known as the PTGs, means primitive tribal groups. So these PVTGs of India or other hunter-gatherer communities of different part of the world, they are living in a very simple life. Their settlement system is very simple. Their food diet is very simple. Their material culture is very simple, as well as their mortuary practices is also very simple. So, if we'll study these kind of cultural characteristic features which are still in practice by different group of people, that used to help us to understand the past culture or similar kind of characteristic feature of the past people or our prehistoric people. So nowadays the ethnoarchaeological research is very common in archaeology and a kind of major areas. Major areas. It was Louis Binford. It was Louis Binford who, for the first time, studied the Eskimos of Alaska. Similarly, the John Yellins were among the Bushmen or Kungsan of Africa from this ethno-archaeological point of view, and it helps to reconstruct the past culture of that particular area. If we'll take example from the Indian context, it was Dr. Malti Nagar of Deccan College, Pune, who introduced this ethnoarchaeology for the first time. Later, different scholars studied, did their PhDs, did their researches from this ethnoarchaeological point of view. So, this is the ethnoarchaeology. Coming to the experimental archaeology, this is another dynamic area which is recently emphasized by the archaeologists. So, if we'll see, if we'll analyze the meaning of experimental archaeology, it used to indicates about some kind of experiments, some kind of test, and it is also having some kind of ethnographic analogies. So, if we'll see the simple people, the tribal people, the hunter-gatherer people, they are using very simple artifact as we discussed already. So, if we observe very carefully the method of manufacturing of different kind of artifact or object by these simple people, tribal people, we'll see some kind of similarity to the past culture. Suppose we are getting some kind of stone artifacts of from the any archaeological sites. It may be from the prehistoric time, protohistoric time, or early historic time. Let's start with the early historic time. If early historic time we are using, we are getting some kind of evidences of ceramics, pots, or bricks, and if we analyze their methods, technique of manufacturing, technique of firing, and if we see in present ethnographic context, the simple people are preparing their bricks, ceramics, pots in the similar way. So that particular knowledge of making pots, firing pots, or preparing bricks, or constructing a house, the plants, that used to help us to understand the past culture if we are getting similar kind of material from the past. Similarly, the stone tools, bone tools, etc. So the way they are using, the way they were preparing, if we are getting similar kind of evidences from the present ethnic context, that used to help us to understand the past culture. So in this context, to know the methods of manufacturing, the technique of manufacturing, the archaeologists used to experiments. So how they were preparing the stone tool, how they were preparing the bone tool, or how they were converting a small piece of bone into the tool, how they were making different kind of art objects. So they used to experiment by using different kind of scientific technique, scientific knowledge, and used to record, and that used to help us to know the material remains of past culture in a better way. So these are the different new and emerging areas of our archaeological anthropology. So in this similar way, the ethnological study also used to help us to know the past cultural remains. So before discussing about the ethnological study, we must have to know the meaning of this ethnology. Ethnology means a kind of comparative study of a particular cultural behavior studied by different scholars. So it is helpful to know the past cultures. Take an example. Uh, somebody already has already studied the material culture of a particular community at one place, and in the similar way somebody else studies i- it in another place. So if we compare both, we'll get a particular conclusion. So in ethnological study, we used to compare the collected data, and based on the comparison we try to get some kind of conclusion which is to helpful to study the past culture. So here from this introductory discussion, we are very much clear that about the areas, about the definition, about the scope of this prehistoric archaeology. So let's go to the historical development of this archaeological anthropology. So as we already discussed, that prehistory we are dividing into three major cultural periods. One is Paleolithic, second one is Mesolithic, third one is Neolithic. And again we divided. But if we'll see the historical development of this prehistory, we used to get different kind of division. And in this context, we may discuss the concept of three-age system. This three-age system used to discuss about the cultural evolution, where we analyze the cultural evolution, we discuss about different periods, and based on their cultural characteristic features, we named in different way. So here in three-age system, basically we are discussing the our prehistory culture, our past culture in three different major categories. One is the prehistory Stone Age culture, one is Metal Age culture, one is Iron Age culture. In Stone Age culture, people were using only stone as their major tools. Metal Age culture, they introduce metals, basically the copper and bronze. In Iron Age culture, they introduce iron. But it does not mean that Metal Age culture or Iron Age culture means they were using only the iron tools. Or in Metal Age culture, they are using only the copper and bronze. No, the material remains of past culture. It may be the stone tools, maybe the bone tools, maybe the ceramic remains. It was continuing. It was continuing. Of course, the percentage of use was comparatively lesser than earlier one. So at the beginning, it was the John Lubbock, the British archaeologist. He divided this Stone Age culture into two divisions. That is Paleolithic and Neolithic. That is the Paleolithic and Neolithic. So when we are discussing of the development of prehistoric studies, it is divided into three major phases. It had three major divisions, and this division was purely based on the uh, material remains, their typology, their technology, their raw material, etc. So these three phases are phase one, which extend from 1863 to 1900, phase two, that is 1900 to 1950, and the phase three, that is 1950 onwards till date. So the first period is marked by individual effort, where the second period, that is the phase period, is known for the institutional involvement. And the third phase is characterized by the application of different dating methods as well as other advanced technique, methods, equipment, etc. So first phase, what we are calling, so that particular time, the archaeologists, they were working to know the past culture from their own interest individual level. We can take example of phase one from Indian context. It was Robert Bruce Fruit who discovered stone tools from Palavaram near Madras in 1863. So that was not in an institutional level. So similarly, in other parts of country also there are a lot of works, lot of discoveries of prehistoric artifacts between this time period and that is up to the 1900. In phase 2, that is 1900 onwards, the prehistoric research become more developed due to the involvement of different academic and research institutes. In this context, we can take example of H.D. Sankalia, who studied the Navasa river basin on the Pravara in Maharashtra and try to reconstruct, try to analyze the stratigraphic deposit and its relation to that particular cultural sequences around 1956. So here, in the similar way, they studied, they investigated different river basins. So this is about the development. So first, what we discussed that in first phase of prehistoric study, the researcher, the scholars, the archaeologists, they were working at their own capacity, own level. Second stage, 1900 onwards, involvement of institution, different research organization were there. And at the third phase, the modern scientific technique, modern dating methods like absolute method of dating, etc. involved. Sorry. So in the similar way, if we see the development of protostick study, we are aware that in 1921, Dayaram Sahani has recovered some archaeological evidences from the Harappa, or what we are calling it, the Indus Valley sites. And after that, other works are systematically, with the involvement of different institutions, are done. Researches are conducted in the same area with the help of different scientific techniques. So this is related to the protohistoric. This is related to the protohistoric. So now we will proceed towards The interdisciplinary research. The interdisciplinary research. Nowadays, if we'll see in any subject, any area, the researcher, the scientists are focusing more and more on interdisciplinary areas where the scientists from different subjects, specialists, they are working together. They are working together. So, in the similar way, if we'll see the interrelationship or interdependency of this archaeological anthropology, we'll get that this particular archaeological anthropology is also very closely related to some other disciplines, other subjects. So this relationship of archaeological anthropology we may divide in two types. One is intra-disciplinary, another is interdisciplinary. Let's start with the intradisciplinary study. What does it mean? Means the relationship of archaeological anthropology with the other branches, other areas of anthropology, like the sociocultural anthropology, the biological anthropology, etc. Because we know anthropology is one of the important branch of social science discipline, and all the areas subdivision of anthropology are having its own importance. So when we are discussing archaeological anthropology, we are focusing more on the past culture, and basically the material remains what present from the past. But in biological anthropology, we are focusing more and more the origin, evolution, and distribution of human. And in this context, we are also studying the past people, the primate. In primatology, we need to study the primates and mainly the fossil primates and the living primates. When we are studying the fossil primates, that is helping us to understand their form, shape, size, height, cranial capacity, etc. And how these kind of biological characteristic features are related to the past culture, to the primitive culture. So it used to help us. So that's why in biological anthropology we are studying the origin, evolution, distribution of human being from the biological point of view. In archaeological anthropology, we are also studying the origin, evolution, distribution of culture during the past, and where human being was playing an important role or a major role. Because when we are discussing the past culture, we can discuss without the past people, past human being. So these ancient people, these prehistoric people, they were the maker of past culture. So to understand the past culture, we must have to understand, we must have to take help of biological anthropology. Similarly, the cultural anthropology is to study the origin, evolution, distribution of culture. How the cultural elements, cultural components are different from one to another. How they evolve from one time period to another time period, how they distribute from one to another, and that used to help us to know the evolution of past culture. So if we'll see the interdisciplinary, we used to get the relationship, the connection of this archaeological anthropology with the biological anthropology, with the cultural anthropology, and in the similar way, the with the linguistic anthropology. So now coming to the interdisciplinary relation. So here we used to see the relationship of archaeological anthropology with the biological sciences, earth sciences, physical and chemical sciences, as well as the social sciences. So here, as we are discussing again and again, the basis of archaeological anthropology is aimed at the total reconstruction of ancient human society, or to reconstruct the past human culture, and also it is the study of the chronological and geographical limits of the past culture, ancient culture. So here two things. When we are discussing about the archaeological anthropology, one thing we are focusing on the reconstruction of our past society. Reconstruction. Because we don't have any kind of written evidences, we don't have any kind of photographic evidences of the past. So whatever we are getting from the exploration, whatever we are getting from the excavation, so based on those findings, we are trying to reconstruct, rebuild the past culture. So in the similar way, we are also studying the chronology, means time sequence, the evolution. What was the at the beginning stage, what came next to that, and what is the recent one. So phase by phase, time to time, how these cultural evidences are changing. What are the factors behind this change, and what were the result of this change? And because of this chronological study, we are able to know the changes in human culture. We may take example of hunting gathering people to the agriculturist people. So similarly, the another important area is that geographical limits. Geographical limits. Nowadays, we are studying the migration, which is very fast because of the present modern transportation facility, introduction of modern technology. We are moving very fast from one place to another place. But during that time, there was a limitation. So there are geographical limits also we need to study. So here in this context, the interdisciplinary relationship, we will study the biological sciences, how this archaeological anthropology is related to the biological sciences, and where we will study the its relationship with different kind of flora, as well as the relationship with different kind of fauna. Flora means the plant remains, fauna means the animal remains. Following to it, we will also try to understand the relationship of this archaeological anthropology with the earth sciences, where we will study the geomorphology, we will study the sedimentology, we will study the geology. So how these areas of earth sciences are related to the archaeological anthropology. So in the similar way also we will study different physical and chemical sciences like chronometry, chemical analysis, etc. And next to that, the relationship of archaeological anthropology with different subjects of social sciences, including history, sociology, archaeology, anthropology, psychology. So let's go one by one. So when we are trying to study this inter relationship, and as I told, that first thing we are trying to reconstruct the past culture. And when we are reconstructing the past culture, we are getting the role of local ecology, local environment, and the geographical setting in a greater way. Because the local environment used to play important role in changing the culture. So with the change of environment, ecology, the culture need to change, and also we need to fix their temporal limit, time limit, and we also try to understand their material culture and their idea additional aspect of this culture. So now we'll discuss how this archaeological anthropology is related to the other disciplines and the other subjects. So in biological sciences, as we told, both the flora and fauna are very important part. If we'll see the area of botany, if we'll see the area of zoology, botany used to study the origin, evolution, distribution of different kind of plant remains. And at the same time, zoology used to study the origin, evolution, and distribution of animal remains. So when they are studying the origin evolution, it used to study how they evolved, how they originated, and what are the factors behind this evolution origin. And those data are very much helpful in our archaeological anthropology. So let's go to the botany or the study of flora, study of plants. So in archaeology, one major subdiscipline that is called archaeobotany used to study the various kind of sorry, various kind of plant remains found in archaeological sites. As we discussed earlier, during the prehistoric time, the dependency of human being was more or very close to their local environment. They are basically the hunter gatherers. They are basically depending on fishing, and for hunting or gathering, they had to depend on their local environment. For hunting, even if they were hunting the animals, birds, but they were using different kind of plant products for making weapons. Take an example. For hunting, they were using bow and arrow. For hunting, they were using spearhead. So for making bow and arrow, they must have to take help of a bamboo or other plant remains. Or for making spearhead, the handle it was prepared with the plant remains. Later, during the Neolithic time, they started agriculture and making the plow, making the yoke. They were using different kind of wood. They started their settled life for construction of houses, building. They were exploiting the plants. Similarly, during prehistoric time, they were using different kind of plant products, wood, for making fire to protect themselves from the cold as well as from the wild animals. During prehistoric time, they were gathering the fruits, roots, tuber, berries, seeds, gums, leaves, flowers, etc. from different plants. So these wild plants playing important role in their subsistence. So they mainly they are depending on the different kind of plant products, not only for food but also for other material. So these evidences of plants from the archaeological context are available in different forms. Maybe the burnt wood converted to charcoal, burnt or wood converted to the fossil, or the grain remains. Sometimes, if you see the evidences of leaves, grasses, husks, or seeds are present in clay and pottery, because during Neolithic time onwards, when people started making pottery or ceramics, they were using these plant products in the binding material or to fire their kilns or their furnaces. So, because of that, these plant products are available from different archaeological sites, maybe in the form of woods, maybe in the forms of fossils, maybe in the form of charcoal, etc. So, here, here, these particular materials or plant products or the microscopic remains of different plants or different flora, including the pollens, help us to understand their subsistence, their type of foods, their environment, their ecology, their dependency with their surrounding environment and nature. So to study these plant remains, the archaeologists use different kind of techniques methods. Flotation is one among them. In flotation, usually the archaeologists they used to wash the samples in water and the plant remains usually used to float. They used to collect and, and they used to examine, analyze. So these plant remains, as I told, are very peculiar in Paleolithic and Mesolithic time when they were completely depending on their surrounding nature. Similarly, during the Neolithic stage, when they started food production, they began to cultivate different kind of plant products, different kind of cereals, different kind of crops, pulses, etc. So this relationship of man nature was very close during these prehistoric times, and the evidences of these plant products are very much helpful to reconstruct the past climatic condition, the past environment. So in this way, one scientific technique which used to give very authentic dates, that is called the dendrochronology or tree ring analysis, which is very much useful to know the relative date of a particular plant product. The charcoal is charcoal or burnt wood, that is helpful to know the date time period of past, and the carbon 14 or radiocarbon method is used to provide a very absolute date by studying these charcoals. So these plant products are very much helpful in archaeological study. That's why the relationship of flora or relationship of botany with archaeological anthropology is very close. Similarly, the fauna. Fauna means the animal product. As we are aware that the animal kingdom is the second important component of man's biological environment and is again intimately connected with the human adaptation. And that's why it was so right from the Stone Age time to see the linkage, the connection of these prehistoric people with different kind of faunal product, animal product. If we'll see, starting from the Stone Age culture, prehistoric culture, or we may say the lower Paleolithic culture, we'll see the relationship of animal with the human being was very close. And in archaeological sites, these animal remains are usually available with the different kind of cultural materials. We are discussing that during Paleolithic time, sorry, during Paleolithic time, human beings were depending on hunting and gathering economy. Hunting means they were hunting different kind of birds and animals. So it used to help to understand that which kind of birds were present during prehistoric time, which kind of animals were present during prehistoric time. So some of the animal remains like bones, teeth, antler, tusks, etc. are found from the archaeological site in fossilized form or in semi-burnt condition. So the paleontologists they used to study these fossil remains of these wild animals, whether they are extinct or still alive, and their relationship. And it used to help us to understand their relationship. So how they were related, how they were exploiting, how human beings were exploiting the different wild animals, and how wild animals were also exploiting the human being. So their relationship we need to study. So in this context, the archaeogeology, a new branch of archaeological anthropology, or we may say the new branch of archaeology, which used to study the animal remains found on Holocene archaeological site, Mesolithic onwards. So usually different kind of archaeological sites evident different kind of faunal remains, which includes bones, antler, shells, fish remains, birds, rodents, and even the insect remains. So the type of use, how they were using, as we told, the animals are exploited for various purposes, like bones and antlers were sometimes used for tool making. As we discussed, for preparing different kind of weapons, realistic people were using the wood or branches of trees. But in the similar way, the bones and antlers were also used in the tools or for different kind of activities. Sometimes harpoons, we can take example of harpoon, fish hooks, they are used by the prehistoric people for hunting activities. Similarly, the skins or hides of big wild animals were used for covering their body as clothing or roofing their huts or sometimes to carry the liquid material or as a container. So also some of the beads, some of the bones, some of the fish bones were also used as the ornaments by the prehistoric people. Apart from that, which is very important, that prehistoric people were using animal as their food. During Paleolithic, Mesolithic time, they were hunting the wild animals, and during Neolithic time onwards, they were also started domesticating these animals for various activities, including food. So they kept reserve for food during the time of scarcity, during the time of different kind of natural calamities, drought, famine. That time they were using these animals as the ready-made foods. So that time they started both hunting the animals as well as the domesticating the animals. So the evidences of hunting at large game, big animals, they are also very commonly evident from different Paleolithic sites. Evidences of the hunting of small animals and birds are very commonly found from the Mesolithic, Neolithic sites. Hunting of cattle, sheep, goat, pigs were also present during the Paleolithic time, and also domestication of these animals during Neolithic times are also evident from different sites. So anyway, so the evidences of different animals found from different archaeological sites help us to know the relationship of human being with their surrounding environment. It used to help to reconstruct the past culture. It used to help to know the paleo environment. So, in the similar way, we'll get a very close relationship of earth sciences with the archaeological anthropology, where earth sciences play a pivotal role in the analysis of archaeological sediments and in the reconstruction of physical features of ancient landscape. Geomorphologically, sedimentology and geology are very important from this point of view. So, if we'll see the geomorphology, how this geomorphology is helpful in archaeological anthropology to study the ancient culture, we'll see that it is having a very close relationship because this geomorphology is the branch of study, branch of physical geography, which used to study, which used to study the landform and the evolution of landscape. Landform and evolution of the landscape means we know the land surface it used to differ from one place to another place. It used to differ from one place to another place, and the formation of one area, one landscape is different from another one. And this formation, this landscape is very closely related to the human cultural evolution. Usually, the archaeological sites in general and the prehistoric sites in particular are located in different geomorphological locations or the geomorphological situations, which includes the hills, foothills, plains or piedmont area, river banks, close to the lakes, coastal area, etc. As we are aware that the Olduvai Gorge of Tanzania, which is located at the Victoria Lake, is one of the important prehistoric sites from where we are getting different kind of archaeological evidences related to the human cultural evolution, related to the human cultural evolution. So that particular site is located close to the lake. Similarly, we are getting numbers of archaeological sites from the river bank because that time our prehistoric intelligence they were not aware about the storing of water, and for their survival they need water, and that water bodies were also place of habitation of different fishes and also different wild animals. They used to depend on those river bodies. So prehistoric people they were living close to these river banks to get the water and the animals for hunting easily. So the study of geomorphology help us to know the geomorphological location of archaeological sites and their relationship in the cultural development. Similarly, if we'll see the Neolithic people, They started hunting gathering economy along with domestication of plants and animals. So hunting gathering, it was continuing from the Paleolithic time, but they introduced agriculture or the domestication of plants. And for domestication of plants, it was essential to select a place where the water is available plentifully and soil is fertile. That's why they were selecting such kind of site. So to understand this kind of cultural period and the reason behind the development, the geomorphology is very much helpful. Geomorphology is very much helpful. Similarly, the sedimentology is also very much responsible, helpful in archaeological development. So as we know, the archaeological sites are nothing but the small or large deposit of soils and sediment which are associated with the past human activities of various kinds. So when we'll analyze this thing, we'll see that wherever archaeological sites are present, we need to see these are formed usually by the nature or by the culture. So when we are discussing of the formation of archaeological site by nature, we need to see the role of environment, where the soils are deposited on the material, the evidences or the sites, or the sediments are deposited on that. So later in course of soil erosion or various activities that you to expose. So sedimentology is to help us to know such kind of formation of archaeological sites. Such kind of formation of archaeological sites. And here we also need to take different kind of help of this sedimentology to understand or to systematically study the sediments and their relationship in formation of that archaeological sites. Take an example. The examination of physical and chemical properties of sediments or of soils like that nitrogen, phosphate context will provide the complementary evidence to understand to recognize various activities of archaeological sites. So this sedimentology is to help us to know the human dwelling or human habitation place, the place of animal, the place of activity or animal butchering, the place of workshop or pottery making place, burial place, or etc. So the sedimentary deposit of an archaeological site is to help us to know the type of deposit, the landscape, the cultural period, etc. So geology is also equally helpful in understanding the earth formation and which is helpful to understand the archaeological development, archaeological formation. As we are aware that geology is to study the rock formation on the earth surface, and as we already discussed, the prehistoric people they were using different kind of stones as the tools. So the type of stone and their formation that is very much important in archaeological study. So geology used to help us the development of archaeological stratigraphy, the formation of rocks, formation of minerals, their time period, their chemical composition, their physical property, etc. So geoarchaeology, a new area of archaeology which used to help us to understand the properties of this kind of rocks, minerals, ores used by the ancient people. And also it used to help us how different kind of natural agencies like the wind, water, ice, earthquake used to preserve or disturb or destroy the archaeological sites. So geology is very much helpful. Geology is very much closely related to the archaeological anthropology. In the similar way, we can see the relationship of physical and chemical sciences, where the physical science, including the physics and chemistry, help us to reconstruct the past human societies from the archaeological record. So, in this context, we can discuss the chronometry. Chronometry used to help us to study the stratigraphy, used to help us the stylistic of artifacts, the stylistic features of monuments, degrees of patination, etc. Or chemical composition, role of different kind of chemicals on archaeological materials or prehistoric tools. So here the different kind of dating techniques like radiocarbon dating, archaeomagnetic dating, potassium argon dating, uranium thorium dating, fission trap dating, electron spin dating, thermoluminescence dating. All these dating techniques are part of the chemical sciences and physical sciences, and which used to help us to know the chemical reaction, their physical properties, and those kind of reaction and properties used to help us to know their time period, their chronology, etc. So this chemical analysis, particularly the techniques borrowed from the organic and inorganic chemistry, which have also contributed in a significant way towards the analysis interpretation of archaeological material. So here we can take example about the copper, iron, glass technology, which was introduced by our prehistoric people, our past people, our ancient people at different period of time. So this traditional knowledge system, traditional technology, how these are continuing from that time, how they evolve, how they introduce, and how those techniques are helpful. That need to help to understand the technological development. So in the similar way, we can understand the chemical properties of the diet, nutrition, or food, or different kind of residuals or waste material, or different kind of pottery, ceramics, and their causes of damage, causes of use, causes of consumption, etc. So these chemical analysis are very much helpful. We can take example of stretch grain on stone tools. Shows that already in the Middle Paleolithic time, sun-dried bread of wild grass seeds was being prepared and consumed in Africa and Europe. So see, the chemical properties present on the stone tools help us to know the type of food consumed by our prehistoric people, the type of plant material present during this particular time period. Similarly, the chemical analysis of different kind of color used for prehistoric people in rock shelters for making different kind of paintings. So those chemical properties or those kind of colors help us to know their culture and The chemical properties of those colors help us to know the material what they were using and how these materials preserved and protected. In the similar way, the relationship of social sciences are also equally important in understanding archaeological anthropology. And in this context, as I told, the role of history, geography, anthropology are very important. History, as we know, we discuss the study of past from the origin of writings. So history is to study the past, and archaeological anthropology also used to study the past. But difference is that in history, their main focus is on their society, culture, war, and the different activities of the kings and rulers. But in archaeological anthropology, also we need to study the past, but emphasis is on the past material culture. So both are studying the past, but the emphasis is slightly different from one to another. But the area, what material, what they are studying, it is same for both. The relationship of anthropology we already discussed in interdisciplinary study. So if we'll discuss the relationship of different sciences, whether that is intra or inter, we used to see a lot of connection, lot of linkage among them, and they used to depend to each other. They used to depend to each other. So here, here when we are discussing the interdisciplinary relationship, we are getting a big link, a huge relationship of archaeological anthropology with other sciences, other disciplines, other subjects. Without help of these discipline subjects, it is simply impossible to reconstruct the past culture or past environment or the human behavior of ancient time, earlier time. So that's why it is very much important to know, to understand the relationship of different subjects like botany, zoology, anthropology, history, sociology, psychology, physics, chemistry, geology, and these subjects used to help us to know their inter relationship. Interrelationship. So here with this, now we are proceeding towards the conclusion parts. So from this discussion of archaeological anthropology, that is the block one definition and scope, we can conclude that we have learned something related to the meaning, concept, and definition of archaeological anthropology, their relationship, their scope, their historical development, the evolution of archaeological anthropology, and their relationship with the other subjects. Their relationship with the other subjects. So this is all about this archaeological anthropology. So now we can go for the discussion. If you are having some kind of doubt, you can ask. We will try to clarify this kind of thing. So now it is over to the all the participant students. So you may ask if you are having any kind of doubt. So we'll go for clarification. So please, anyone is interested to ask some questions or to know something? Anyone? If no one is having any doubt, so we can close our today's discussion, and tomorrow we'll come up with another area of archaeological anthropology at the same time. So, anyone? Okay, thank you. Thank you for kind patience and hearing and supporting me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.